For 3 years, I quietly wired money every month to keep my parents' house from being taken by the bank, only to sit at my mother's anniversary dinner and hear my father raise a glass to my brother, the man who had been stealing from all of us the entire time. One question. That's all it took. One question, and the whole table went silent. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with why I was even there. Because honestly, I almost didn't go. It was a Friday night in December, the kind of cold that gets into your joints and stays there, and I had just closed a 12-hour shift, reviewing amended tax returns for a pharmaceutical client whose prior accountant had apparently learned math from a cereal box. I am a CPA. I have been one since I was 26, which means I have spent the last 7 years of my life making sure that numbers tell the truth, even when people desperately want them to lie. I am good at my job. I am the kind of good where partners 2 levels above me call me directly when something doesn't add up. I say this not to brag, but because it matters for what comes later. Because you are going to ask how someone like me missed what was right in front of her face. And I want you to understand the answer before you judge me for it. The answer is that I trusted my family. And trust is the one variable that has no column in any spreadsheet I have ever built. My parents had been married for 35 years. My father, Richard, was a retired postal worker with a bad back and a worse investment account. My mother, Carol, had worked part-time as a school aide until her knees gave out in 2021. When my father's pension started falling short, a combination of medical costs, a refinanced mortgage from the mid-2000s that he never fully explained, and the kind of slow financial erosion that nobody talks about until it becomes a crisis, they called me. Not my brother, me. My brother's name is Daniel. He is 32, 2 years older than me, and he has the kind of face that makes strangers trust him immediately. Square jaw, easy smile, the sort of handshake that feels like a promise. He has been in some version of a business venture since he was 19. There was the food truck that lasted one summer. The gym supplement brand that dissolved after the supplier turned out to be in a different country than advertised. The real estate wholesaling operation that generated a lot of business cards and 0 closings. Last year, he rebranded himself as a logistics consultant, which, as far as I could tell, meant he had a LinkedIn profile and strong opinions about supply chains. My parents adored him, my father especially. Daniel was the talker, the charmer, the one who could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they had been waiting for him. I was the quiet one, the one who sat in the corner doing calculations in my head, the one who, when the family nearly lost the house, showed up with a payment plan and a direct deposit setup and 0 fanfare. 3 years ago, I sat at that same kitchen table where I had eaten 10,000 bowls of cereal, and I told my parents I would cover the shortfall. The mortgage was $1,450 a month. Their pension and Social Security combined left them about $800 short after basic expenses. I told them I would wire $1,200 a month, enough for the gap plus a small buffer. I set up the transfer myself, recurring, automatic, from my personal checking to a joint account my mother and I opened specifically for the household bills. I named it in the memo every single time. Mom and Dad House. I didn't tell Daniel. My parents asked me not to. They were embarrassed. They didn't want him to think they were struggling. He had enough on his plate, my mother said, with the new business. I agreed to keep it quiet. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was that after the first 6 months, I stopped looking at the joint account. Not because I was careless. Because every time I opened it and saw my own transfers lined up in a neat column with nothing beside them, I felt something I didn't have language for at the time. I know now that it was grief. Grief for the version of my family where I didn't have to do this alone. So I stopped looking. I kept sending the money. I told myself that if anything was wrong, my mother would tell me. She would not tell me. That is the part I did not understand yet. The anniversary dinner was my mother's idea. 35 years, she said. We should do something special. She booked a private dining room at an Italian restaurant 40 minutes from their house. The kind of place with linen, napkins, and bread that comes in a little basket. She invited me, Daniel, and Daniel's girlfriend, a woman named Priya who had the posture of someone who had recently learned she was better than most rooms she entered. I drove 2 hours in December sleet to get there. I arrived 7 minutes early. Daniel and Priya were already seated, which surprised me because Daniel had not been on time to a single family event in living memory. He was wearing a blazer I didn't recognize. It was a good blazer. Priya's necklace caught the candlelight in the way that only real things do. My father was glowing. He looked the way he always looked when Daniel was in the room, taller somehow, like proximity to his son added an inch to his spine. He stood up when I walked in and hugged me. And it was a real hug, not a performance hug, which I noted and filed away without understanding why. We ordered. We ate bread. Daniel held court about a new contract he was supposedly finalizing with a distribution company in Atlanta. He spoke in the confident, rounded tones of a man who had learned that specificity kills a good story, so he kept it vague but impressive. My father nodded along. My mother smiled the smile she used when she was concentrating very hard on looking comfortable. I had been watching my mother smile that smile my whole life. I knew every variation of it. The one she wore that night was the one I called the held breath, the one that meant she was waiting for something to be over. I didn't know what she was waiting for yet. After the entrees were cleared and the dessert menus came out, my father stood up. He picked up his wine glass, the kind of gesture that requires an audience, and the table went quiet. "I want to say something," he said, and his voice had the rough, effortful quality of a man who doesn't often let himself be emotional in public. 35 years with this woman? He looked at my mother. She reached up and took his free hand. "We've had hard times. You all know that. A few years ago, I thought we might lose the house. I thought everything we built was going to go." He paused. He cleared his throat, and then your brother stepped up. I set my fork down. Daniel came to me, my father continued, still standing, still holding the glass. He told me he had it handled. He told me not to worry, and because of him, we're still in that house. Because of him, your mother and I have had 3 years of peace. He turned to look at my brother, and there was something in his expression I can only describe as reverence. "I am proud of you, son. I am more proud than I know how to say." Daniel looked down at the table in a gesture of practiced modesty. Priya squeezed his arm. I sat very still. My father turned to me then. The warmth in his face didn't disappear exactly, but it rearranged itself. "Elena," he said. And the way he said my name was careful, in the way that names become careful when something uncomfortable follows them. "I know you've been busy with work. I know you have your own life. I hope someday you'll understand what it means to show up for family the way your brother did." The table was warm, the candles were lit. There were flowers in a small vase in the center. Everything was arranged for celebration, and I was sitting inside it feeling the floor tilt. I didn't say anything for a moment. I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. I have learned, over years of sitting across from clients who are hiding something, that the most dangerous thing you can do in a confrontation is lead with emotion. Emotion is a flag. It tells the other person exactly where to push. "That's really great," I said, and I smiled, and the smile was genuine in a way that probably confused everyone at the table. Because I was not performing calm. I was actually genuinely calm in the way that only happens when something you suspected is confirmed, and now you finally know what you're dealing with. Because here is what you need to understand. 2 weeks before this dinner, I had received a piece of mail at my apartment. It was addressed to me my name, my apartment number, but it was from a leasing company I had never heard of, and it was a past due notice for a 2022 Honda Pilot with a balance of $6,400. The account number listed was mine, or rather, it had my name on it. I had never leased a Honda Pilot in my life. I had spent the 2 weeks since then, quietly pulling threads. The kind of pulling that you do before you enter a room, not during. The kind that a person with my training does not rush, because rushing produces loose ends, and loose ends give people room to argue. I had not told my parents. I had not told Daniel. I had not told anyone. I had, however, pulled my credit report, and my mother's, and my father's, and now my father was standing in a restaurant telling me my brother had saved the family while I was sitting on a folder of documentation that told a very different story. I reached into my bag and took out my phone. I did not make a show of it. I just placed it on the table beside my plate. "Dad," I said, keeping my voice even. Can I ask you something? When Daniel covers the household expenses, how does that work? Does he transfer directly to you? My father sat back down. He looked mildly puzzled, the way he always looked when I asked a follow-up question he hadn't anticipated. He takes care of it through your mother, he said. They work it out between them. I don't get involved in the details. I looked at my mother. She was looking at her dessert menu. Mom, I said. The joint account we set up, the Chase account you've been using that for the mortgage payments? Elena. Daniel's voice had a new edge in it. The easy smile was still there, but it had tightened at the corners, the way a screen door tightens just before a storm. Why are we doing finances at Mom and Dad's anniversary dinner? Can we just enjoy the evening? I'm just asking a question, I said. I kept my eyes on my mother. My mother put the menu down. She looked up at me, and there it was, the held breath smile, but underneath it now something else. Something that looked like a woman standing on ice that is starting to crack. It all goes to the same place, sweetheart, she said. Everything is fine. Is it? I asked. What does that mean? Daniel said. His voice had dropped. Priya had gone very still beside him with the specific stillness of a person who has been in this situation before and knows how it ends. It means I want to understand how the mortgage is being paid, I said. I unlocked my phone. Because I set up a recurring transfer 3 years ago, $1,200 a month, every first of the month, into the joint account that I share with Mom. And I want to make sure it's being applied correctly. Nobody asked you to do that, Daniel said. The table went quiet. I looked at him. I'm sorry? Nobody asked you to send money, he said, his voice now carrying the quiet authority of a man who has decided the best defense is offense. Mom and Dad didn't ask you for charity. I had it handled. You decided to insert yourself. And now you're going to sit here and make this weird because you can't let someone else be the one who helped. My father frowned. Daniel. No, Dad, I'm serious. This is what she does. Everything has to be documented. Everything has to be a transaction. It can't just be family helping family. It has to be something she gets credit for. I let him finish. I have found, in my professional life, that people who are hiding something will almost always tell you more if you let them keep talking. I'm not looking for credit, I said, when he was done. I'm looking at my banking app. I opened it. I navigated to the joint account, the one with my mother's name and mine on the header. I turned the phone to landscape and set it on the table where my father could see it. Dad, I said, look at the deposit history. November 1st, $1,200, sender, Elena. October 1st, same amount. September 1st, same amount. I scrolled. August, July, June. I kept going. This is 36 months of transfers, Dad. Every single one of them from me. My father leaned forward. He put on his reading glasses. He looked at the screen for a long time. Now, I said, show me Daniel's deposits. The silence that settled over the table was the particular silence of a room in which everyone suddenly understands the shape of something that has been invisible until now. My father scrolled. He scrolled up. He scrolled down. He handed the phone to my mother. She looked at it and handed it back without a word. It's a different account, Daniel said. He hadn't missed a beat. His voice was steady, his posture open, his hands relaxed on the table. I noted it. Men who have been running a con for a long time develop a kind of physical grammar for these moments. I transfer to a separate account. One I set up directly with Dad. You wouldn't see it in that one. What account? My father asked. The Wells Fargo one, Daniel said. The household account. We don't have a Wells Fargo account, my father said slowly. Daniel looked at Priya. It was a fast look, barely a second, but I caught it. It was the look of two people checking silently whether they are running the same story. You might have forgotten, Dad, Daniel said. You've got a lot of accounts. Richard, my mother said quietly, putting her hand on my father's arm. Let's not do this here. This is our anniversary. Can we please just... Carol. My father's voice was not loud. It was the opposite of loud. It was low and slow, in the way that meant something had shifted in him. Is there a Wells Fargo account? My mother did not answer. Mom, I said gently, it's okay. You can tell him. She pressed her lips together. She shook her head once, not as a denial, but as a woman refusing to be the one who pulls the pin. "Let me check something else," I said. I navigated to the mortgage servicer portal. I had bookmarked it 2 weeks ago. I logged in with the credentials I had set up for my parents when I started the payments, because I was the one who had set up the paperless account in the first place. The page loaded. I looked at the screen. I had already seen this number. I had already processed it, but seeing it again, at this table, in the candlelight, with my father's glasses still on and my mother's hands shaking, made it real in a new way. "Dad," I said, "when did you last see a mortgage statement?" "Your mother handles the mail," he said. "She said we went paperless." "You did go paperless," I said, "which is why you didn't see the notice from October." I turned the phone toward him. The screen showed the account summary. At the top, in red text, were the words "account past due." My father's face did something I had never seen it do. It went blank. Not the blankness of confusion, but the blankness of a man absorbing a blow he hadn't seen coming and not yet sure how badly he was hurt. "You're 2 months behind," I said. "The account shows a payment received in August and nothing since. The amount needed to bring it current is just under $3,000. I looked at my brother. "Daniel, where are the payments you've been making? This is insane," he said, but his voice had changed. The steadiness was still there, but underneath it now was something working very hard to stay above water. "You are sitting at our parents' anniversary dinner, running a forensic audit on the family. Do you hear yourself? Do you have any idea how this looks?" "I know exactly how it looks," I said. "I've been doing this for 7 years. I know what it looks like when numbers don't match the story." "What story?" He spread his hands. "There is no story. I've been helping Mom and Dad. The account got behind, that happens. I'll fix it next week." "You'll fix it next week," I repeated. "Yes. Okay," I said. "Then log in right now and make the payment. You have your phone. The servicer portal is right here." I turned the screen toward him. "Make the payment. I'll watch it clear." Priya put her hand on Daniel's forearm. The table was very quiet. "I can't access liquid funds right now," Daniel said. "I have capital tied up in the Atlanta contract. It clears in January." "It's always January," I said. "Or 90 days. Or when the deal closes." I looked at my father. "Dad, I need to show you one more thing. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry this is happening tonight." My father looked at me with an expression I had not seen from him in a very long time. It was not anger. It was something older than anger. It was the look of a man who has been holding a belief for 3 years and is only now being asked to set it down. I opened a different tab. I had screenshot everything 2 weeks ago, but I pulled up the live credit report I had run on my parents through a secure CPA tool I used for client work. I had their written authorization on file. I had gotten that when I set up the financial documents 3 years ago, a detail that Daniel had likely forgotten existed. "Dad, there's a Honda Pilot lease in your name," I said. "It was opened 18 months ago. It's currently $6,000 past due. You didn't open it." I looked at my brother. "Did you open it, Daniel?" The question didn't land the way accusations usually land. It landed quietly, like a stone dropping into still water, and we all watched the rings spread. "Mom co-signed," Daniel said, and the fact that he said it, the fact that the words came out at all instead of a denial, told me he had calculated that a partial confession would somehow contain the damage. "She said it was fine. I needed reliable transportation for the Atlanta clients. It was a business expense. I was going to make the payments." "Were you making the payments?" I asked. He didn't answer. "Daniel." My father's voice had gone very quiet. "Did you take out a loan in my name? It was Mom's name, too. Did you take out a loan in my name without telling me? I was going to fix it before you found out. The Atlanta deal." "Stop." My father raised one hand. He was not a dramatic man. He was not the kind of father who made speeches or threw things. He was the kind of man who went quiet when he was genuinely hurt, and the quiet he went into now was so complete that the ambient noise of the restaurant forks on plates, voices from other tables, faint music from somewhere seemed to rush in to fill the space he left behind. He looked at my mother. "You knew about the lease?" My mother's eyes were wet. He needed it for work, Richard. I couldn't say no. He's building something real this time. I believed him. You believed him, my father said. He's your son. He's a grown man, my father said, who took my name and put it on a debt without my knowledge. He turned back to Daniel. His voice was not raised. It was the worst thing, it was level. Is there anything else? Dad? Is there anything else? Daniel looked at his water glass. He looked at Priya. He looked at the linen tablecloth. He did not look at my father. The credit card, I said, because I had it in the report, and I was not going to let him walk out of this room having disclosed only what he chose to disclose. There's a Citi card. It's in both your names, Mom and Dad. It was opened 14 months ago. The current balance is $22,400. My mother made a sound. Not a word, just a sound. What? My father said. Was that card used for? Business expenses, Daniel said, and his voice had gone flat now in the way that voices go flat when a person has run out of register. Networking. The Atlanta trip. Some equipment. Some. $22,000, my father said. I was going to pay it off when the deal closes, I finished. In January, the waiter came by to ask if we wanted coffee. My mother waved him off without turning her head. I sat back in my chair. The anger that had been living in my chest for 2 weeks, since the day the leasing notice arrived at my door, had burned down to something colder and more useful. I was not vindicated. I did not feel the satisfaction people imagine you feel in these moments. What I felt was tired and clear and certain about what had to happen next. Dad, I said, I need you to hear me. The mortgage is fixable. I can cover the past due amount this week. The lease we can work with the leasing company. The credit card is more complicated, but there's a path. I looked at my brother. But the path requires a police report. The lease and the credit card, those were opened without Dad's knowledge or consent. That's identity theft, regardless of who else signed. For the accounts to be disputed, and the liability removed from Dad's credit, he has to report it. You are not calling the police on my son, my mother said. Her voice was sharp in the way that cornered love is always sharp. Elena, I am your mother, and I am telling you right now. Mom, I said, I'm not calling anyone. Dad is. Or he isn't. That's his decision. I looked at my father. But if he doesn't, those debts stay on his credit. The mortgage company won't negotiate on the basis of fraud unless there's a report on file. I can walk you through every step, but it has to be your choice. The dinner table had become something else entirely by that point. The anniversary candles were still burning. The flowers were still in the vase. But the room had reorganized itself around a new center of gravity, the way rooms do when the thing everyone has been careful not to touch is finally out in the open. My father looked at my brother for a long time. Daniel sat with his elbows on the table, his head slightly bowed, the blazer he had worn to impress still on his shoulders. He looked young. He looked, for the first time that I could remember, like exactly what he was, a man who had borrowed authority he hadn't earned, on money that wasn't his, against a future that didn't exist. I don't understand, my father said finally, and the words were not angry. They were genuinely bewildered in the way that honest people become bewildered when they encounter sustained dishonesty. I defended you. I boasted about you. I stood up at this table tonight and thanked God for you. He paused. While your sister has been paying our mortgage for 3 years, and you have been, he stopped. He couldn't finish it. Taking credit for it, I said, not unkindly, and taking the money, Elena, my mother started. Mom, I need you to listen to me without defending him for 1 minute, I said. I love you. I love Dad. That is the entire reason I have been sending $1,200 every month since I was 27 years old. But what happened here is not a mistake. It is not bad luck. It is a pattern. The food truck, the supplement brand, the wholesaling, every single time something has collapsed, someone in this family has quietly cleaned up the damage. And every time we cleaned it up quietly, we taught Daniel that he could do it again. My mother had started crying. Not loudly, she was not a loud woman, but steadily, the way a faucet runs when no one turns it off. I'm not doing it quietly this time, I said. I am not sending another dollar into an account that I cannot verify is paying the bills it was sent to pay. From tonight forward, I pay the mortgage company directly. I will set up autopay from my account to the servicer. No intermediary, no envelopes, no trusting that the money gets where it's going. I looked at Daniel. And you are going to sign a repayment agreement. A legal one. For the lease arrears and the credit card balance that was charged in Dad's name. I'll draft it myself. You have 90 days to produce a payment plan, or I refer the account to a collections attorney and file the fraud report on Dad's behalf under the power of attorney he is going to give me tonight. I reached into my bag and pulled out a 2-page document I had printed before I left my apartment. I slid it across the table. I prepared this last week. It's a limited financial power of attorney covering the mortgage, the insurance, and any accounts linked to the household. Dad, if you sign this, nothing touches your finances without my approval. My father looked at the document. He looked at it for a long time. Then he picked up a pen from the inside pocket of his blazer. He had carried a pen in every jacket he owned since 1987, a habit from his postal days, and he signed it. Daniel stood up. He pushed back his chair, and it scraped loud against the floor. I can't sit here. And sit down, my father said. It was 2 words, but Daniel sat down. We stayed at that table for another hour, not eating, working. I called up the mortgage servicer on my phone and walked my father through registering a new authorized user. I pulled the credit dispute documentation and explained what he would need to file. I gave my mother the name of a nonprofit credit counselor I had already researched, a woman who specialized in elder financial abuse cases, who could walk them through the process without judgment. Daniel was quiet for most of it. Priya said almost nothing. At some point, she excused herself and went to the restroom and came back with her coat on, which told me the conversation she'd had with herself in the mirror. Before we left, my father walked outside with me while the valet brought my car. The cold was sharp, the kind that clarifies everything. He stood with his hands in his pockets. I owe you an apology, he said. More than one. You don't have to. I do. He turned to look at me, and in the light from the restaurant entrance, his face looked stripped of everything extra. No performance, no pride, just a 63-year-old man, standing in the cold, trying to say something true. I have been so afraid of your brother failing that I convinced myself he was succeeding. And I let that story cost you. He shook his head. 3 years, Elena. 36 months, I said. I kept track. He almost smiled. I know you did. I didn't do it for credit, Dad, I said. I did it because you and Mom should be okay. That's all I ever wanted. He put his arm around me, and we stood there for a moment in the cold, which is not a sentimental detail I'm adding for effect. It actually happened. My father, who communicated love primarily through showing up at my college graduations and occasionally mailing me newspaper clippings he thought I would find interesting, put his arm around me in a restaurant parking lot in December and held on. The house will be fine, I told him. I know, he said. You're on it. In the months after that dinner, I did what I said I would do. The mortgage was brought current within a week. The lease was settled through a negotiated payoff that Daniel agreed to in writing, including a payment schedule that I monitored monthly. The credit card was a more complicated process. The fraud dispute took 11 weeks, but it was ultimately resolved, and the liability was removed from my father's credit report. Daniel and Priya broke up in February. He is living, as of the last thing I heard, in a room in a house share 2 hours away, working for a moving company. He calls my parents occasionally. My father answers. My mother answers every time and talks to him for longer than she should, which I have accepted as outside my control. I did not file the criminal complaint. I considered it. I talked to an attorney about it, but at the end of that conversation, I understood that what I needed was not for my brother to be in a courtroom. I needed my parents to be safe. Those are different goals. I chose the one that served the people I was actually trying to protect. I visit my parents on the last Sunday of every month. I bring coffee. My father has started a small vegetable garden in the backyard, which he is very serious about and which produces more zucchini than any 2 people could reasonably eat. My mother has started going to a weekly card game at the community center, which she claims she only goes to for the social aspect, and which she wins at with a consistency that I find genuinely unsurprising. The mortgage is current. The accounts are clean. I check them from my laptop on the first of every month, which takes about 4 minutes, and every month the numbers say what they are supposed to say. Last month, my father called me not on the regular Sunday, just a random Tuesday evening, and said he had been listening to a radio program about forensic accounting and wanted me to explain what exactly I did all day. I talked for 20 minutes. He asked questions, not the polite questions people ask when they are waiting for you to stop talking, but the real kind, the follow-ups, the why does it work that way, the when did you know you wanted to do this. When I hung up, I sat in my apartment in the quiet for a while. There's a thing I say to my junior colleagues when they're frustrated, because a client is refusing to see what the evidence clearly shows. I tell them, the numbers are always patient. They don't need you to believe them. They just sit there, accurate, and wait. Truth doesn't expire. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't take bad deals to make the discomfort stop. It just waits for the moment when the right person finally looks directly at it. My brother spent 3 years building a version of our family, in which he was the hero and I was invisible. He built it carefully, in the space my mother gave him, and the shadow my silence created. And for 3 years it worked, the way most things built on borrowed money work, until the day someone runs the actual numbers, and the story and the math refuse to occupy the same space any longer. I was not angry when I drove to that anniversary dinner. I had already passed through angry 2 weeks earlier, alone in my apartment with a leasing notice and a credit report and the specific, hollow feeling of being used by someone you love. By the time I sat down at that table, I was just a woman with documentation and nowhere left to put it except on the table where it belonged. My father didn't need a toast. My mother didn't need a scene. They needed the truth. And the truth, as it turns out, had been in the numbers the whole time waiting, patiently, to be read.